you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. My childhood was boring for the most part. A small cul-de-sac in southern England, no crime, no excitement, just the smell of cut grass on Saturdays and drunk dads swearing at football on the Sundays. We were the only kids on the street. Me, Jamie and Ash. 3 bikes, 2 walkie-talkies and 1 dead-end street. It was safe. Well, at least, that's what our parents thought. But then we noticed something strange about the house at the far end. Number 12. It belonged to Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds was old, not ancient, but old enough to move slow and speak softer than most. He wore the same jacket every day, even in the summer. He never waved. He had no visitors, no cars, no deliveries, just a red wheelbarrow in the side yard and a shed we were too scared to peek inside. The only time we saw him smile was once, when Ash's cat got hit by a van. We were crying, and he stood at the window, smiling. It started with a sound, shovel against soil, regular, steady, always after dark. We thought it was just construction work, maybe a busted pipe or something, but the noise never moved. Same corner of the yard, every night. Jamie climbed a tree to see over the fence. He said Mr. Reynolds was digging, not for pipes. It's a hole, like a body-sized one. He just stands in it, digs deeper. Ash dared me to get closer, so one day I climbed over the fence, and that's when I found it, a trapdoor. It was built into the ground, just behind the shed. Old, wood warped with moisture, hinges rusted to hell. It was covered in fresh sod. Someone had tried to hide it badly. There was a padlock, but it was hanging open, the door slightly cracked. I didn't go down, well, not yet, but I told the others, and for the next few weeks we kept watching the house. The digging stopped, but Mr. Reynolds started watching us. He would stand in the window in the morning, same expression, that dry, lifeless stare. Once, Ash waved at him. He didn't wave back, but the next day, Ash's bike tyres were slashed, and 2 nights later, Jamie's window was found open from the outside. We stopped playing near number 12 after that, but I couldn't stop thinking about that trapdoor. One Saturday, my mum was out late and the boys weren't around. I packed a torch, gloves and a camera, told myself I'll just look, then I'll leave. It was around 8 PM, it was still light outside, and I climbed the fence. Everything was silent, even the birds were gone. The trapdoor opened with a loud crack. The smell hit me first, mildew, rust, and something else, something like copper. The stairs led straight into the earth, no concrete, just mud walls reinforced with old beams and plastic sheeting. The deeper I went, the colder it got. I found a single hanging bulb connected to old extension cable that vanished into the dirt ceiling. It barely worked, flickering like a dying heartbeat, but the room was real. In the basement, there were wooden shelves nailed together with scrap planks, and on those shelves were personal items, necklaces, glasses, keychains, a child's backpack, faded purple with a Care Bear patch. Each item had a label, a name. Some I didn't recognise, but one made my chest cave in. Lucy M, June 1997. Lucy Martin had gone missing when I was 8. It was national news. She vanished walking home from school. They never found her, but her backpack, the same one from the photos, it was here. There were 6 shelves, each with 3 to 5 names, all young, mostly women, and 1 child. I took photos, fast, hands shaking. I was about to leave when I heard it. A sound. Above me, the creak of a floorboard, and a sigh. I turned off the light and crouched behind one of the shelves. Footsteps crept down the stairs, slow, careful. A flashlight beam scanned the room, passed over the walls, the dirt, the shelves, and then paused, right near where I was hiding. I saw shoes, heavy work boots, and I could hear his breathing, then silence, then a whisper. "You don't belong here." He didn't move, neither did I. It felt like hours. Then the light flicked off, and I heard him go back upstairs, but he didn't close the trapdoor, didn't lock it, just left it open, like he wanted me to wonder if he was waiting at the top. I stayed down there for another 10 minutes, frozen. Then I climbed up, slow as I could, expecting a hand to grab me at any second. But there was no one, just the open shed and silence. I ran. I never told the police. I was 15. I didn't think they would believe me. I showed the boys the photos, but 2 came out blacked out, like the film had melted. And a week later, a small box appeared at my doorstep, wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was one of the necklaces from the basement, the tag still attached. It said, Lucy M. There was no note, just that. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But sometimes I wonder if he knew I was there the whole time, if he let me out, if he let me leave, because now I lock every window, every night. I haven't seen Mr. Reynolds in years, but sometimes I still hear digging, and I pray it's not coming from beneath my house. If you made it this far, maybe you're not like the others. Hit subscribe and I'll keep the stories coming. I grew up in Missoula, Montana, one of those towns where everyone swears nothing bad ever happens. It's quiet, cold in the winter, polite in the summer. You know your neighbours, or at least you think you do. My mum raised me in a modest duplex just outside of town. It wasn't much, patchy yard, creaky stairs, bathroom that whistled when you flushed. But we were close with the woman next door. Her name was Darla Mae Hodge. Miss Darla was what you'd call old-fashioned. Grey hair in a bun, floral nightgowns, thick glasses. She kept a neat lawn, tended her roses, always offered candy to neighbourhood kids. She was sweet, or at least she seemed sweet. I used to help her with groceries. Mum said it was the polite thing to do. Sometimes she'll bake little cookies and leave them in plastic wrap on our doorstep. They were dry as hell, but I always thanked her. She would laugh and say, "Sugar's expensive, you'll learn to savour the salt instead." I thought it was a joke. Now I'm not so sure. It all started with a smell, not constant, just these short bursts. A wave of something sharp and sour that would drift into our kitchen whenever we opened the windows. At first, Mum blamed the bins, then the neighbours, then the dog we didn't have. Eventually, she said it was probably Darla's cat, Walter. Walter was old and always sleeping. Maybe he died inside a wall or something. But then Walter showed up on our porch one night, headless, wrapped in a plastic wrap, like a gift. The next time I brought Darla her groceries, I asked about Walter. She gave me this soft, vacant smile. "Walter's just fine. He's in a better place now, cold and quiet." I assumed she meant the vet. When I passed through her kitchen, I saw something strange. A large industrial freezer in the corner. Not one of those small home freezers. This thing was tall, beige, and buzzing like a dying street lamp. And it was padlocked shut. I asked about it. She said, "Oh, that's just for meat, dear. Keeps better when it's locked up. Tempting little thieves around these parts." Then she winked. That freezer haunted me. I told my mum. She brushed it off. "Some people just stock up for winter," she said. "Meat gets expensive up here." But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, especially when the handyman disappeared. His name was Kevin. He worked odd jobs around the neighbourhood, painting, roofing, the gutters. Nice guy, early 30s, clean cut, laughed a lot. He'd been doing work on Darla's roof, and then one day he just vanished. No note, truck still parked outside his flat, his tools still on Darla's porch. People said he probably just left town, had warrants, maybe fled child support. But I remembered something. The day he went missing, I saw him carrying a roll of plastic sheeting into her backyard. He never came back out. I made a mistake that weekend. I tried to look through her back window, just once. Curiosity. I stood on the plastic crate and peered into her kitchen, and I saw her, staring back at me, through the glass, not blinking, just smiling, and slowly, reaching out to lock the window. The next morning, a bag appeared on our porch. Inside was a frozen steak. No note, just meat. My mum cooked it, but I didn't eat it. 2 nights later, I was biking home when I passed her yard and noticed the shed door open, just a crack. Inside was dark, but I saw something hanging from the ceiling, a butcher's hook, and below it, boots, just hanging in the dark. That night, I called the police. I didn't tell my mum, I didn't tell Darla, I just made an anonymous call, said there was something wrong at 212 Crescent Drive. The cops came the next day. They searched the house, took hours. A forensic van rolled in. Reporters showed up, tent went up, and Darla, she was just sat in a patio chair, sipping tea, watching them work, smiling. Inside the freezer, they found 3 full garbage bags of frozen parts, Ziploc labels with names and dates, preservatives, meat sauce, a journal. And in the shed, they found Kevin, or what was left of him. Darla Mae Hodge had been murdering and preserving people for over a decade, mostly men, drifters, repairmen, someone's cousin visiting from Spokane, a tenant who didn't pay rent, all chopped, catalogued, and salted. She confessed like it was a recipe. They called her the Butcher of Crescent Drive. Said she was mentally unwell. She was deemed unfit for trial, locked up, gone. 3 months later, we moved. I never looked back at that house, but just before we left, something was left on the porch, wrapped in the same cheap plastic, a shopping list in Darla's handwriting. And at the top, bleach, rope, cat food, and at the bottom, written in red ink, and you. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it, but I still think about that freezer, still hear that soft hum in my dreams, and sometimes, when I open the fridge late at night, I swear I can still smell the copper. I lived alone in an apartment on north side of Chicago, 2-bedroom, top floor, nothing fancy. The kind of place where the walls were thin, the heating was temperamental, and you could hear the couple next door fighting over who left the stove on. I moved in after a rough breakup. I wanted peace, I wanted distance. What I got was a neighbour who knew way too much about me. He introduced himself as Caleb, mid-30s, quiet voice, lived in 2B, the unit right below mine. The building only had 6 flats. He was the only other tenant who'd been there longer than me. He seemed polite at first, too polite. He knew my name before I told him, knew I worked remotely, knew what time I took my trash out. And when I asked how he knew, he said, thin walls. It started with tapping, just after 2 AM, most nights. Soft, rhythmic, like fingernails on dry wool. Sometimes scratching, sometimes knocking, always behind the bathroom wall. I thought it was the plumbing, until one night I heard my own name whispered through the vent. Ava. Clear as day. I froze. It wasn't a hallucination. I was wide awake, and it didn't sound like Caleb. It sounded too close. My toothbrush disappeared, then a pair of socks, then my favourite necklace, a small silver moon pendant my mum gave me. I checked everywhere, even under the fridge. Gone. Then I found the necklace, not in my drawer, not in my jewellery box. It was hanging from the bathroom ceiling vent, tied to a bit of string just dangling there when I came home from the grocery store. I didn't tie it there, and I hadn't been gone long enough for a breaking, unless someone was already inside. That's when I brought a camera, a cheap motion sensor webcam. I set it up in my bedroom facing the hallway, just for peace of mind. The next morning, I checked the footage. At 3:42 AM, the sensor went off. The footage showed someone walking past my bedroom door, not breaking in, not smashing a window, just already inside, and walking slowly down the hall towards my bathroom. I couldn't see the face, but the body type, the hair, it looked a hell of a lot like Caleb. I called the building manager, told him I needed help checking something behind my walls. He brushed me off, so I took matters into my own hands, started tapping around the bathroom, looking for hollow spots, and behind the mirror, I found one. A patch of drywall that sounded empty. I pried it open. Behind it was a crawl space, just wide enough to squeeze through. It ran along the entire wall between the units, and inside there were things, wrappers from food I hadn't eaten, photographs of me sleeping, my missing toothbrush, a mattress, and a folder labelled 2A, Progress. The folder was filled with notes, written in shaky handwriting. What time I left for groceries, what days I skipped a shower, who I called on the phone, when I cried. There were also sketches, drawings of my apartment layout, a plan. There were circles around my bed, the front door, and the bathroom vent. At the bottom, written in red ink, Day 54, soon. I took it all to the police. They raided 2B that night. Caleb wasn't home, but they found more photographs in his flat, more labelled folders, other tenants, other women, all laid out like profiles. He'd been watching every one. But I was the only one with a crawl space entrance in my wall. I was the one he chose. They never found him. I moved out a week later, but 2 months after I left, I stopped at a petrol station on the way to my new place. The cashier smiled and said, "Hey Ava, back already?" I froze. I'd never been there before. I looked at his name tag. It read, C. Baldwin. If you're hearing this, it means I survived long enough to tell it. But sometimes, when I lie in bed, I swear I hear scratching again. Behind the walls and the vent, it's whistling, just like it did before.